Hello, hello, and welcome to Inner Work for Greater Good. My name, as always, is Emily Eldridge, and I am the host of the show. I am the creator of the Change Light system, which is a system of personal self-development. It's quite a complete system of personal self-development that's all about healing your inner struggles, revealing your truth strengths, and lighting you up so that you can feel good and make the biggest possible difference that you want to make, whatever way you feel called to make it. So I have well, first of all, let me just say, I had an amazing couple of days at the Clinton Global Initiative here in New York City. Apparently, I'd never been before. So it's led by Bill and Hillary Clinton, and it brings together all these amazing people from around the world who were working really, really hard to make a difference in all different capacities. So it was just absolutely, like, for my change maker's heart, my impact driven heart was like nirvana. I love being surrounded by impact driven people who are really trying to make a difference in the world and have really good hearts and all that stuff. So I noticed too that my voice is a little raspy, and it's probably there we go. It's probably because of all of the loud talking that we all had to do, because I mean, I don't know how many, is 1,000 people too? I have no idea how many people were there. It's a lot of people. But in any case, that was really exciting. And if you know, in case you're watching this soon after I recorded, it's also UN General Assembly and Climate Week here in New York City. So the city is full of amazing people from all over the world working really, really hard to make a difference. And I also want to point out too something that was so refreshing to see, and it's been increasingly refreshing and increasingly present, and that is conversations about mental health, conversations about emotional well-being, and also mental and emotional well-being in relation to even specific situations in the world. So one of the big ones is climate anxiety. So the anxiety, the fears, all that stuff that people are carrying around the fact that we have all these climate issues and that things are getting worse, and, you know, how can we make them better? But all of the, you know, struggles and anxieties and fears and overwhelm that a lot of people experience, and especially young people. The statistics are not so great about that, to be honest with you, from the panels that I attended that have to do with how much, you know, kids are thinking about the fact that we have so many problems with the climate and with our planet that are man-made. And, you know, there's a lot of impending doom that a lot of people feel. But there is a lot of hope too. There's a lot of good stuff happening. But nevertheless, it's important to acknowledge the emotional impact that it has on us when it comes to these big issues. And sometimes, you know, the sense of helplessness, hopelessness, despair, anger, all those feelings that are associated with that. So I just want to throw that out there. Maybe I'll do a show about that, how certain, you know, worldwide events affect us emotionally, and how important it is to acknowledge that and to process those feelings so that we can really function in a healthier way. That's how I always approach it. You know, let's process the feelings so that we can approach situations with greater clarity and wisdom and peace and effectiveness. So here's something that popped into my head, though, as something that I want to address. And I may have, excuse me, may have touched on this in a previous episode when I was talking about the full change light system and talking about the drawing out process. Now, I have not shared the drawing out process in any of these episodes. Really, I would love for you to join our community and take the course and really learn the full drawing out process so that you can experience it for yourself, and but also learn about it in the context of, you know, what it can really do for your life so that you get in a good habit of it. Anyway, but the point is, though, is that my signature technique is what I call the drawing out process, because what you literally do is you draw out whatever's going on inside of you. I want to take this episode, though, to address the reasons why drawing out, usually using actual drawing, like crayons and paper, or just a pen and paper or pencil, or, you know, colored pencils, whatever it is, whatever it takes to really draw that stuff out of you. Why is that so powerful? And one of the reasons why I want to address this in an entire episode is because there are a lot of approaches out there that are very powerful and effective in helping us with our emotional well-being. And I've talked about too, like I do other techniques as well. I've tried a bunch of other techniques, and One of the ones, there are a couple that I tend to go back to. One of them is The Work by Byron Katie, which is all about writing down your stressful thoughts and processing through them. And then, Sedona Method, which is about, really looking at those thoughts that we carry and beliefs and going through processes with that, and then shamanic healing. So those were some of the things that I've addressed in the previous episode. And I just, again, barely touched on the drawing out process, but let me explain though, I'm sorry, let me backtrack a little bit. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because it's amazing to me how when I see approaches, so for example, I saw something recently that was talking about how can you address climate anxiety and how do you deal with those feelings? And there's some wonderful suggestions, journaling and meditating and breathing. And please understand, I think all of those are absolutely wonderful when it comes to helping ourselves with emotional well-being. There are wonderful benefits to those practices. And at the same time, I am continually surprised and shocked. I mean, maybe it's partly because this is what I do and I know how well it works, but also because I figure that I can't be the only one who really knows how powerful this is. I'm continually shocked by the lack of, that drawing and that art and that visual expressiveness is frequently not listed as something, as a way of processing emotions in a healthy way. And I understand there's art therapy, that's a pretty common technique. What I do is not art therapy, just so you know, for the record. It's very different. I've actually had a client as an art therapist as a client. She said, nope, what you do is not art therapy. It's very different. But the whole point is that, I want to address why it shocks me that it's not mentioned more frequently in circles around well-being. But I want to take a moment to express why drawing and creative expression, but I'm just going to talk about drawing today, is so extremely powerful and effective and vital in emotional healing, and why it works so extremely well. And there are some very clear reasons. And I'm going to give them to you. I'm going to break them down. So here's how I typically explain why drawing is such an important thing. So, some people would actually describe what I do as a kind of parts work, but even then I've heard of other parts works that still don't have drawing as a key element. Here's why the work that I do is so extremely powerful and effective. And one of the big reasons is because of the drawing component. So here's why drawing, sorry, I'm repeating myself and kind of talking around and around. Here's one big reason that I use to explain why drawing is a key component in really deeply accessing the emotional richness, whatever is going on inside of you and in your subconscious, and why drawing is so effective at bringing that out and helping it to heal. One big reason that I explain is I kind of like to break it down very simple terms. And I talk about left brain, right brain. And I know for those of you who are brain experts, I understand this might be oversimplifying, but as I see it, it's actually simplicity is really what helps people to understand a lot faster. So I'm going to, maybe for some of you, this might seem oversimplified, but this is a really quick way to understand this. So when it comes to the left brain is typically where we find, we use reason and logic and analysis, and our left brain is the part of us that likes to figure things out. Typically, and so that's our rational mind, left brain that's typically what we mean by left brain. The thing is, the left brain tends to communicate in language, words. And by contrast, the right brain, which tends to be the center of our emotions and the way in our feeling, and even like deep subconscious feelings, tend to be in the right brain. And so it's feelings and creative expression and random type thinking and innovative thinking, out of the box thinking. A lot of that tends to be centered in the right brain. That's very kind of right brain thinking. That's how that's thought of. Here's the key difference though. The right brain, as I'm speaking about it, tends to communicate, and the subconscious tends to communicate not in words and language, as we talked about with the left brain, but in images, in senses, in feelings. And so when we ask when we invite ourselves to draw out, as opposed to just talk about or think about how we're feeling, draw out how you're feeling, notice what you're seeing, what you're sensing, and then draw that out. What you're actually doing is getting information from a much, like you're getting the emotional information in the language of emotions, in the language of the subconscious. And so here's where I find that certain therapeutic approaches, this is where they're kind of limited. In like talk therapy, for example, if we're talking about how we feel, then we're asking the left brain to basically tell us what's going on in the right brain. And what tends to happen there too is there's an interpretation that goes on. So it's, I'm feeling this way, I've got all this subconscious stuff that's going on inside me. And then we tell the left brain, okay, well then you need to figure out what's going on over there. But not only that, put it into words. And the reason why I tend to find that it's very helpful. I'm not saying there aren't, times in which we do need to really talk about how we feel. And I am very much a verbal processor. Don't get me wrong. Ask my husband. I am a very verbal processor. So I'm not saying that it's not helpful to talk about how you feel. It's extremely helpful to talk about how you feel. But if that's all you're doing, then in my experience and my opinion, you're actually missing even deeper information that can come from tapping into those feelings and noticing what you're seeing, noticing what sensations you're getting, and allowing the subconscious and allowing your emotions to express themselves in that way, because that is typically more of a direct approach. If you really want to access those feelings, that's one of the best ways to do it. And so the problem though too, so that's one big reason. It's the language we're talking about, that by drawing out, when you draw out how you're feeling, you are inviting your right brain to speak in its own language, as opposed to trying to get it to speak in something that's really not its language typically. So that's one reason. And then I already sort of tapped into this. But another thing is when you're asking, the left brain to put words to what's going on in the right brain, it's sort of like, if you imagine this, imagine if we're both in the same house, but you're in one end of the house and I'm in the other end of the house. And someone asks me in my end of the house, hey, what's going on in the other end of the house? Well, I'm not over there. So I don't necessarily know what's going on, but maybe I could go, well, here's what I'm hearing, and here's what I think is happening, and here's what I think that person said happened, or is that they're going to be doing, but it's asking basically one part of your brain to interpret what's going on in a completely separate part of the brain, as opposed to going to the other side of the house and saying, hey, what's going on here? And looking around, you see? And so when we ask our left brain to interpret what's going on in our right brain, we're not actually going to the source a lot of the time. We're asking this part to figure out, to analyze. And it's that analytical component that can actually get in the way of truly processing and understanding our own emotions and allowing them to express themselves fully. And here's why I also know that this isn't always what works, and where we can trick ourselves into thinking that we are, processing our emotions. I spent a lot of years fully, literally cut off right here, where I was analyzing, I'll do it this way. I was analyzing my emotions. I was analyzing how I felt, and I was really trying to pay attention to what's going on with me. And then I'd analyze it and I'd put it into words and I'd figure it out. What ended up happening was what I realized finally was I was cut off. And even though I was analyzing how, thinking about how I thought I was feeling, I wasn't actually feeling the feelings. And I wasn't really going to the source. I was letting my left brain do the way too heavy job that it's not designed to do. I was thinking that that my left brain was actually doing the job that really needed to happen with my right brain, which was to allow myself to feel how I was feeling. And so what ended up happening was even after those years of being just hyper analytical about my feelings, it meant that I wasn't actually allowing myself to feel. I was protecting myself. My left brain was actually protecting me from really going into the feelings. And so when I finally did realize what was going on and circumstances forced me to wake up, for my body and my emotions to really wake up, and a lot of it was because the pressure was so big inside, is that when I finally did start to allow myself to feel those feelings, it was like the pressure had built. And it was all of this emotional stuff that I thought I'd worked through, but no, I really hadn't. Because what are feelings? What are we supposed to do with feelings? Well, it's right in the word. We're supposed to feel them. We're supposed to feel our feelings, not just analyze them or try to figure them out. So notice if you are, and again, this is usually for self-protective reasons, because feeling can feel really painful. It's a lot of times why we don't want to feel them. But if you are analyzing your feelings in lieu of actually feeling them, just be aware that you might be doing that and why you're doing that. And that actually you could be precluding yourself from really getting the real deep, rich information and wisdom that's in those feelings. And also, not only that, allowing your body to do what it needs to do and process the feelings, whether it's cry, or maybe it's, you've got to really feel that pain inside. So just a way of saying something to be aware of when you might be, the left brain might be doing work, doing a job that it was never designed to do, okay? It's just not the left brain's job. And not only that, I want to add this. One of the things that I think about with the left brain, I think of it as like a mechanic, and it sort of gets in there into a car and it wants to figure things out and it wants to find the problem. But as my clients will tell you, and as I've experienced, a lot of other people have experienced, trying to fix how you feel, that's not what it takes to fix a feeling. It's not a mechanical thing. Emotions are not mechanical. We can sort of understand them in that way. And there are some approaches that I take with emotions that you might describe as, sort of understanding, how these things fit together. But really, ultimately, the emotions just need to flow. Some people like to say that emotions are energy in motion. And if we're busy trying to figure them out, then we're not letting them flow and move. Our emotions are not a car engine. They're just not. They don't function that way, which is why we need to learn to take a non-left brain approach and take a more right-brained approach with drawing out and feeling and allowing things to come up and trusting the wisdom and the intuition that's there. That's what really the drawing is about and why it's so powerful. Okay, now that I've gone on. So those are 2 points. I'm talking about the left brain and the right brain, and the language of the left brain and the language of the right brain. And also that when we're expecting our left brain to do the job of our right brain, we're actually keeping us from really accessing the truth and the wisdom that's inside. You can't just analyze your feelings. You've got to feel them. You've got to let them speak and really tune in and allow them to flow the way they need to flow. Also, when we draw out how we feel, what we're doing, this is really, really powerful. This was a big light bulb moment for me in terms of even recognizing that I had parts inside of me. And that is, first of all, when we draw out, is that we externalize those feelings. Now, this serves several purposes. When you draw how you feel, is you're basically noticing that you have a feeling inside, and you're not just sitting with it inside of you and letting it like torture you or continuing to struggle with it. You're putting it outside of you. So when you put it outside of you, that does some amazing things. For one thing, let's say the feeling that you're having, that you're noticing from your feeling is that it looks like this angry, screaming woman. Or maybe it feels like a wall, or maybe it, feels like a black hole or what have you. So when you're drawing it out and you're pouring it out, and again, you're letting your subconscious speak in its own language, you are externalizing it. So it's no longer in here. I mean, you might still feel it in here, but you're putting it out there. You're pouring it somewhere, which also shows you as you're looking at it, you're like, okay, that's a feeling that I have. So maybe it's a black hole that you're feeling inside, a black sucking sadness. Okay, so now you've drawn that black sucking sadness. Well, does that look like you? No, that's not you. It's a part of you. And even if you do draw something that looks like you or looks like you as a little girl, it's still not you. It's a part of you. You've been able to externalize that feeling that you have, or that perception that you have of yourself. And so by externalizing it, you're creating a kind of separation from it. I don't mean a disconnection from it. I mean an awareness that it's not you, it is just a part of you. It is not the all of you. And that is extremely important, because a lot of times emotions can be so completely overwhelming and all-consuming that we think that they are us. We think that because we're feeling angry, that I'm an angry person, or this is a core part of who I am. It's like, no, not necessarily. You're feeling anger, and this part of you that feels the anger, it looks like this. Okay, but it's a part of you. It's not all of you. And that way it becomes a more manageable thing, as opposed to something that feels kind of amorphous or abstract or like all-consuming or all-powerful inside. It becomes this thing that, oh, this is like quantifiable. I can kind of like, this is something I could possibly work with. It's not, in control of me. It's just there, and now it's outside of me. Not only that, and this is really, really important too, and this is my final point, is that you externalize it. And one of the things I have in my drawing out process is then you name that part of you. And naming that part of you, again, that's another added element of your externalizing. You're creating that sense of separation, meaning that's not me, it's a part of me. It has this other name. And so therefore you're dealing with something. And that way, again, you have it in front of you so you can actually deal with it. It's not, this sort of thing that's kind of there. It's right there. I can actually look at it. I can talk to it. I can listen to it. I can work with it in some way or another, and it can respond to me. That's the final point, that what you're doing when you draw out your feelings, actually there's more things actually, but one of the main things you're doing is you're allowing your feelings allowing yourself to feel your feelings, but you're also giving those feelings what they need and want, and what those feelings and those parts of you tend to need and want. And one of the big reasons why they actually cause so much struggle and strife and conflict inside is because we're not giving this to them. And that is, they need and want to be seen, heard, understood, and validated. So I realize that's 4 things, but basically those are the key ingredients that we're giving those feelings when we draw them out. When you draw out a feeling, you then can look at it, you can see it, and it can feel seen. When you draw out a feeling, you write down whatever you hear that it's saying, then you're hearing it. You're putting it somewhere. You're not just like hearing it in your head. You're actually like acknowledging it and honoring it, like going, oh, this is what I'm hearing, and I'm putting it out on a page. I'm acknowledging its existence. Understanding it. When we put that out there and we draw it, we are allowing ourselves to acknowledge it, but then also getting information that we wouldn't otherwise necessarily get by trying to struggle with it on the inside or just talking about it. Talking about feelings. I mean, I get a lot of insight and wisdom just by hearing myself talk. So again, talk therapy is great. At the same time though, drawing, because sometimes what happens is when you actually draw it, it comes out differently than you'd expect. And there can be so much information and ahas and epiphanies from what comes out. So for example, you might draw that part of you that's really sad and scared and wounded, and you draw it in a certain location. And so you might see some information. So for example, what's coming to mind is I had an inmate once who he drew out this little boy that was crying and that was hurt. And I asked him about the drawing that he drew. And I also asked him about the clothes that he was wearing. He said, wow, yeah, those are the same clothes that I used to wear all the time. And, they were like the same clothes that he was wearing when a certain thing happened. Or I forgot the exact details, but my point is, in other words, if he hadn't drawn it out, he might have just been like, yeah, it's a crying little boy. But then by allowing the subconscious to put out a lot more information than he was consciously aware of, he was able to realize, oh, and he made all these connections with so many childhood memories, and like really like a key, really wounding childhood memory that he had wearing those clothes. It was like, oh yeah, I used to always wear those clothes. But the point is that brought out, and then that brought out more information. And then also even the environment he was in, the people around him provided him with a lot more, in that drawing, provided him with a lot more information than if he just said, yeah, it's a sad part of me. You see, so this is how this works. But the point is you can understand that part of you so much more clearly when you're looking at it, as opposed to when you're just kind of struggling with it inside or just talking about it. So the understanding is a key part of it, and that's what these feelings want. They want to be understood. So you see them, you hear them, you can understand them better by drawing them. And then finally, then they feel validated. Now, validated, I want to explain, is validated and accepted. So it's like, well, let me just put it this way. It's validated as in like, you're validating their existence. You're also validating their feelings by allowing them to feel and to express their feelings. And when I say validated, well, to be honest with you, one of the things I do when I work with a part is I always validate its feelings. When I talk to that part inside of someone, that X-power, I always validate how it feels. Even if I don't like its approach, even if its perception might be off, it's really important to validate those feelings. That's what feelings need. And think about how you feel when someone validates how you feel. Yeah, gosh, it sounds like you're in a lot of pain. Yeah, I can tell you're really angry right now. As opposed to fighting with you or arguing with you or ignoring how you feel. When you're validated, doesn't that feel amazing? Doesn't that feel so good? So that's what you're doing with when you draw out those feelings, is you're helping that part of you to feel validated. Like, okay, thank you for at least acknowledging my existence and validating that this is how I feel. And it helps them calm down in a way than just more than just talking, but only talking about how our feelings can do for us. So it's that validation. The other thing I wanted to share with you too is that a lot of times people use the term, face your fears. And a lot of times when people say that, face your fears, they mean it in terms of like, face the very thing that you fear, right? So it's like, if you're really scared of swimming, well, then you need to like expose yourself to it, take swimming lessons, face the fear and go do it. Or if, someone's afraid of, I don't know, having a conversation with someone or public speaking, and then they go and they get training in public speaking, or they get up and they actually do it. It's like, those are forms of facing your fears. Well, guess what? Drawing your fears is another form of facing your fears, but it's a form of facing your fears sometimes before you, it's a form of facing, it's multiple ways it's a form of facing the fear. So for example, if you're feeling a fear and you draw out that fear and you're looking at that fear, then you're actually facing that fear. And so it's a very safe and relatively easy way of facing your fears and being able to just acknowledge that they're there. And by facing those fears, okay, I see that you're there. And I can acknowledge that you're there, and it can help you calm down. And it also helps that fear not feel so scary. That's one of the fabulous things about drawing your fears, is because you're facing them. And it's a really safe way of helping yourself feel less scared of that fear. I mean, I'll have some people who will do the drawing out, and the first thing I'll say, how does it feel to draw that out? And they'll say, it feels kind of scary. But then, then they'll say, but as I look at it, I realize it's not that scary. It's not as scary as I thought it would be, you see? So that's the wonderful thing, is you're actually facing your fears. And also another thing too, is sometimes I'll invite a client to draw out like something they're afraid will happen. Draw it out, put it out there in front of you so you can look at it. And again, that's an exercise in facing your fear and helping to diffuse the intensity, to reduce the power of that fear over them. So it's another way that drawing out can really help you face your fears. And by doing so, you're helping those fears and calm down, realizing they're not actually as scary as you might think they are. Or that inner bully is not as scary as it might feel inside of you. Or you might even kind of giggle at it, like, that's kind of a funny looking bully there, Or as I think I've shared with you in previous episodes, where I talk about my first monster and I drew it out. And now, and then I looked at it, I was like, he's kind of funny looking. He's actually a big green hairy monster, which is sort of a cliche, right? But he was a big green hairy monster. And, pretty soon after he just dissolved within me, I could kind of giggle about it. Now sometimes when I talk about it, I'm like, he looks like a giant Muppet. it doesn't scare me anymore. Well, it's not even inside me anymore in that way anymore. But also that he just, it's kind of funny and silly. He's not so scary. So it's a long way of saying that drawing out for these reasons, the left brain, right brain, and really receiving the language from your subconscious, because you're bypassing that analytical left brain and really getting into the meat of things. And because what you're doing is you're giving your feelings what it is that they need and desire, which is to be seen, heard, understood, and validated. And then finally, because you're externalizing and you're putting it out there and seeing it as, that, oh, this isn't actually so scary, and this isn't, this isn't me, it's just a part of me. It just feels more manageable and handleable and quantifiable. And that by doing that, you can actually really work with those feelings a lot more easily than if they're just sitting inside of you and you're just struggling with them, while they're sitting there in the darkness. You're bringing them to light, which is really what it's all about. That is one of the key elements, main things. If you want to transform your darkness back to light, well, you got to shine a light on it. You got to bring it to light. And that's ultimately what drawing does when it comes to a feeling. So this is all my way of saying, do not underestimate the power of drawing how you feel. It is exceptionally powerful. And it's something that is sorely lacking, I find, from conversations about emotional well-being and emotional healing. And that is actually one of my main intentions and agendas, frankly, is to bring this to the world stage so that more people know the power of drawing out how they feel. And in order to feel better, because that's what I want us all to feel. I want us all to feel better so that we can all light up and light up the world and have a more wonderful, peaceful, happy, joyful planet than ever. I hope this has been helpful as always. My name is Emily Eldridge. Check us out, changelight.world. We've got courses there, and I'm developing even more courses for children and inmates. Those are coming soon. So definitely sign up to receive updates about those so that you can maybe even do one of our pilot programs or share it with the people you serve. All right, take care, and I will talk to you soon.